समरो मंत्र भलो नवकार छे 14 पुरवनो सार। समरो मंत्र भलो नवकार छे 14 पुरवनो सार। एना महिमानो नहीं पार, एनो अर्थ अनंत
Ram Jai. We start with the prayers as usual. Namo Orientanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vajjayanam, Namo Loe Sabbasahunam, Eso Panchanamukkaro Sabba Pavapanasano, Manglanancha Sabbe Simpadvam Hoi Mangalam. Namo Orientanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vajjayanam, Namo Loe Sabbasahunam. Eso Panchanamukkaro Sabba Pavapanasano, Manglanancha Sabbe Simpadvam Hoi Mangalam. Namo Orientanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vajjayanam, Namo Loe Sabbasahunam. Eso Panchanamukkaro Sabba Pavapanasano, Manglancha Sabbe Simpadvam Havai Mangalam. Veera Sarasura Surendra Mahito Virambuda Sanskrita Virana Vihata Swakarmani Chayo Veeraya Nityam Namah. Veeratirthamidam Pravtamatalam Veerashagoram Tapo Veere Sri Dhruti Kirtikanti Nichaya Sivirabhadram Visa Kamathe Dharanendra Cha Svochitam Karma Kurvati Kapustulya Manovrutti Parshvanatha Sri Estuvaha अंगूठे अमृतवसे लपितणा भंडार श्री गुरु गौतम समरिय मनवांचित फलदातार भुवसगहरं पासं पासमन्नामि कमगणमुखं विसहर विसनिनासं मङ्गलकलाणावासं विसरफुलिङ्गमन्तं कंठे दारे जोस्यामणो तसगहरो घमारि दुठिजराजन्ति उसामं चिठौ दुरेवन्तो तिष्पणमवि बहुफलो होय नरतिरियेषु विजिवा पावन्ति न दुःख दोगचम् दुःसमतलद्दे चिन्तामणिकप्पाय वबवये पावन्ति विघेणं जीवाय रामरं ठाणं ये सन्तो माय सपतिवरणिवरणहेण तादेव दिग्जबोहिं भवे भवे पास चंद. Welcome everybody. We are now on the subject of Bhagwan Parshvanath's life. We are on the 10th life of Bhagwan Parshvanath, and Kamat, who was his elder brother in the first life when Bhagwan Parshvanath's soul, when the story starts, was Murubhuti. And as we heard previously last week, we started the story with the birth of Kamat in a very poor Brahmin family. And we heard that Kamat's parents, brothers, and the rest of his family died soon after he was born. So he was very unfortunate then. And he was then brought up by kind people who looked after his basic needs. And but he grew up in significant poverty. And constantly unhappy and hungry. And once we saw that he comes across very wealthy people who are wearing very beautiful clothes, and each one capable of feeding quite a few thousand people. And he, looking at them, starts thinking that the difference between them and me is that they must have done some very good punya, and particularly his understanding of punya was that they were probably done a lot of stuff in their previous life, and that's why they have uh, been born in wealthy families, and then they have a lot of wealth, whereas I must not have done any kind of tap, and therefore I am now struggling to feed myself. So maybe the answer to for avoiding a similar fate in the next life for me is to maybe start doing tap, and he sees that as the solution to his trouble. So he becomes a tapas under the auspices of probably some guru. The details are not given here, but he takes what is called tapas diksha, and he feeds himself with roots that he could find in the jungle occasionally, but mainly fasting. And he does what is called Panchangni Tapa, and we'll come to the details of how that is manifested later on in the story. Just very quickly, we will go through the conception and the birth of Bhagwan Parshvanath, and we will discuss that. But there is a very interesting question that was being discussed before the class started, and I think it may be useful or interesting for us all to understand the question and try and answer that. But I'll let Darshana tell us the question when we're ready to do that. Unfortunately, as I was just saving the slide, my computer told me that I've run out of disk space and I cannot open the PowerPoint presentation. Now, I have no idea how I did that or how I can change that, but maybe at some stage I will work it out. I'm going to close it and then reopen to see if it opens in this time. You can't open file because the device doesn't have enough available disk space.
Ajitbhai, do you want to email it to me and then I can see if I can open it?
Yeah, maybe.
I'll send you my email.
PC is backed up, and there's still a lot of space, I think, but I don't know. Don't worry, Mira. There isn't a lot there on the slide, and I can just go through the explanation. So
Okay.
don't worry. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So let me actually see if I can open the previous one. I don't know. Maybe it won't allow me to open any. It's I'll have to do something about this. Okay, don't worry. So as we saw, Kamat in his previous life, prior to being born as Kamat, had spent about 10 Sagarupams in the fourth Narak. Following that, he spent another 10 Sagarupams in many, many different lives, short lifespans, not as long as Narak or Dev. And finally, he is born in this poor Brahmin's household. Presumably, it is not far from where Bhagwan Parshvanath is destined to be born. And because they both meet later on in life, but Bhagwan Parshvanath's birth happened in the city of Varanasi, in the royal household of in the royal household of the king of the city-state. His name was Ashwasen. And what it says here, Varanasi Nagrima Ikshvaku Vansne. Now the Ikshvaku Vans is the sort of the lineage or the ancestors of the king Aswasen, were of the same clan as Bhagwan Rishabdev. Bhagwan Rishabdev's clan was also Ikshvaku Vans. Ikshvaku વંશને વિશે અશ્વસેન નામે રાજા થયા. So that was the same lineage. And Aswasen, it says here that he was a very just, kind, and very decent person and a king. And he was full of all kinds of virtues. And he was also quite strong, so the enemy kingdoms around were not able to sort of do any harm, and he was well respected everywhere. And it also says that he had many queens, and out of that, સર્વસ્ત્રીઓમાં શિરોમણી અને સપત્નીઓમાં અવામા વામાદેવી નામે પટરાણી હતી. So among all his many queens, Vamadevi was the chief of his queens, and she was also very virtuous. And I mean, the language that is used here, those of you who read Gujarati, you would appreciate the beauty of this language that M. Chandracharya's original words have been translated into Gujarati here, and very nicely written. So તે રાજાને સર્વ સ્ત્રીઓમાં શિરોમણી અને સપત્નીઓમાં અવામા વામાદેવી નામે પટરાણી હતી. તે પોતાના પતિના યશ જેવું નિર્મળ શીળ ધારણ કરતી હતી અને સ્વાભાવિક પવિત્રતાથી જાણે બીજી ગંગા હોય એવી જણાતી હતી. આવા ગુણોથી વામાદેવી રાણી પતિને અતિ વલ્લભ હતી. એટલે વલ્લભ means she was very dear to Aswasen Raja, her husband. તથાપि એ વલ્લભપણું જરા પણ બતાવતી નહીં. So she was not proud of the fact, she didn't boast about it, and she didn't make her other Ashwasen Raja's other wives jealous. બતાવતી નહીં એટલે એ સંબંધી અભિમાન ધરાવતી નહીં. Pranath Kalpma, that is where Bhagwan Parshvanath's soul was, and he finished his lifespan of 20 Sagrupam. And so, as we know, that was the life that followed the life as Suvarna Bahu. And when he finished that life, the soul then left that body as a Dev, and on the Chaitra Vad Chot, so that is on the month of Chaitra, on the second half of the month, Krishna Paksh is the Vad, so when the moon is on the wane cycle, and not in the rising cycle, but on the dwindling cycle, Chaitra Masna Krishna Chaturthiye Vishakha Nakshatrama. So that's something to note, that every Tirthankar Paramatma's important events, the 5 Kalyanaks, the position of the stars at that moment is always given and described, and that is relevant because those are extremely auspicious circumstances, because the birth of a Tirthankar Paramatma doesn't occur just like that, and it's usually the birth and the conception and all the other major events occur at very auspicious times. If we look at the astrological charts at that time, they're always very auspicious. So that is why the nakshatra is always mentioned. Vishakha Nakshatrama Tyathi Chavine te dev ardhratre. So in the middle of the night, Vama Devina Udarma Autaryo. So the soul enters the womb of Vama Devi. તે સમયે વામાદેવીએ તીર્થંકરના જન્મને સૂચવનારા 14 મહાસ્વપ્ન મુખમાં પ્રવેશ કરતા જોયા. And this is the norm for the conception of every Tirthankar Paramatma. The mother of the Tirthankar would see these 14 dreams entering their mouth, and those 14 dreams. So if we listen to the Kalp Sutra, the significance of dreams, and there is a whole chapter, a section on dreams in the Kalp Sutra, which we read during Paryushan. And this is described there as well. Indroye Rajaye ane Tadeta Swapna Pathakoye Swapnani Vyakhya Kari Batavi. So the experts interpreted the dreams, and Indra himself also came and interpreted the dream for Vamadevi. And Vamadevi, with great joy, accepted that, and the period of pregnancy went away peacefully without any problems, as is the norm for all the Tirthankar Paramatmas. Anukrame Posh Masni Krishna Dasmiye. So Posh Vad Dasam Anuradha Nakshatra. So again, the nakshatra is mentioned here. The conception was in Vishakha Nakshatra, and the birth was in Anuradha Nakshatra. And she gave birth to Bhagwan Parshvanath. And it is mentioned here that he had the lanchan, that is the mark on the thigh, I think it's usually the right thigh of the Tirthankar Paramatma. There's usually a mark in the shape of that particular lanchan. So the mark that we see at the bottom of the murtis that depicts which particular Tirthankar it is. So for Bhagwan Mahavir Swami, as you all know, it is the lion. For Bhagwan Adinath Rishabdev, it is a bull. And for Bhagwan Parshvanath, it is a snake or a sarp. And so as soon as the child is born, that is noted and recognized. And that again is the peculiarity of the great punya that a Tirthankar Paramatma has acquired in the previous life. Sarpla Lanchanwada Nil Varani Putrane Janma Apyo. So the color of his body was nil. Nil is either dark blue, blackish, kind of the skin color, the skin tone was that Nil Varani Putrane Janma Apyo. And as is the norm, and those of you who have seen celebrations like this, but this is also recited clearly and depicted clearly in the narration of the Snatra Puja that is played every day in most terasas. Tatkal Chappandik Kumari Kao. So they are Devis, and who are the sort of masters of the 8 different directions, and they all come from the different directions, and they start with the preparations of the celebration of the Bhagwan's Tirthankar Paramatma's birth. Those of you who have witnessed this depiction may know what is done, and this is the process is described in the Snatra Pujas quite well. Arahant Prabhunu and Temni Matanu Sutti Karma Karyo. So they come and prepare, they clean the place, they sweep the area, they help the mother. So after the child is born, after the Tirthankar Paramatma is born, these Devis come and help the mother of the Tirthankar Paramatma in different ways, and clean the whole area up. પછી સક્રેન્દ્ર ત્યાં આવી દેવીના અસ્વાપીની નિદ્રા આપી તેમને પડખામાં પ્રભુનું પ્રતિબિંબ સ્થાપિત કરી. So it's also the norm that as soon as a Tirthankar Paramatma is born, naturally the throne of Indra shakes, and he uses his Audignan, the extrasensory knowledge, perception that he has, to find out what event has happened, and then he discovers that a Tirthankar Paramatma's soul has been, Tirthankar Paramatma has been born, and he knows where that Tirthankar Paramatma is, and from where he is, he prepares a huge army of devs, devis, and everybody comes together in their huge vimans. And as they come from very far away, they slowly come and take the size and the shape of the people in that time, in that region, and slowly descend to where the Tirthankar Paramatma has been born. And then the mother is put to sleep by a special process called Swapini Vidya. They use a special power, and the mother is put to sleep, and the Tirthankar Paramatma, the young baby, is taken with them to Meru Parvat, where the celebration and the Abhishek happens in the presence of millions of devs with all kinds of process. And this is again described in the Snatra Puja. And again, this process is standard for every Tirthankar Paramatma. This is the normal custom of all devs, particularly the Indra. That is part of his duty to celebrate the events of every Tirthankar Paramatma's 5 great events. So they prepare all that, and it says, it's described here, દેવીને અવસ્વાપીની નિદ્રા આપી તેમના પડખામાં પ્રભુનું પ્રતિબિંબ સ્થાપિત કરી. So they keep a sculpture or something similar to, looks exactly like the young baby Tirthankar Paramatma, and so that if the mother wakes up, then she is not frightened that where has the baby gone. And they take the Tirthankar Paramatma, the baby Tirthankar Paramatma. એક રૂપે પ્રભુના ઉપર છત્ર ધર્યું અને એક રૂપે વજ્ર ઉછાળતા સુંદર ચાલે ચાલતા, એક રૂપે પ્રભુને લીધા, બે રૂપે ચામર ધારણ કર્યા, એક રૂપે પ્રભુના ઉપર છત્ર ધર્યું અને એક રૂપે વજ્ર ઉછાળતા સુંદર ચાલે ચાલતા, અને વાંકી ગ્રીવા વડે પ્રભુના મુખ તરફ દ્રષ્ટિ રાખતા ઉતાવળે મેરુગીરી તરફ ચાલ્યા. So it says here that Indra takes up 5 different forms. So he makes, and the devs have that ability with their Vaikriya Sari. They can make their bodies small or big, and they can duplicate their bodies. So Indra here creates 5 different bodies of himself, and with one he holds the young baby Tirthankar Paramatma, and on 2 sides he has the chamar, and he is moving those chamar to give peace and gentle wind to the Tirthankar Paramatma. Ek rupe Prabhu ઉપર છત્ર ધર્યું, and with one he holds a kind of an umbrella, and one other body he throws what is called a vajra. It's in a fashion, I don't know if you've seen parades when right at the beginning there is somebody who has a large pole, and he We used to see this as young children in Kenya when there is a police band going. So you have somebody who is demonstrating the skills with handling a large metal pole that is twisted and turned and thrown up and caught again and those kinds of things. So એક રૂપે વજ્ર ઉછાળતા સુંદર ચાલે ચાલતા અને વાંકી ગ્રીવા વડે પ્રભુના મુખ તરફ દ્રષ્ટિ રાખતા ઉતાવળે મેરુગીરી તરફ ચાલ્યા. So they go to Mount Meru, which is at the center of Jambudvip, and there is a particular place there where the festivities and the particular celebration of Tirthankar Paramatma's birth happens, and all the Devs participate in this, and that is why I was suggesting that we could probably conduct a Snatra Puja and we can learn about that whole process, because Snatra Puja is just describing that particular process. So that is the birth of Bhagwan Parshvanath. ત્રણ વારમાં મેરુગીરીની અતિ પાંડુકબલા નામની શિલા ઉપર પહોંચ્યા. So there is a particular place called Panduk 1 on Meru, Mount Meru, and there is a special sort of platform. Shila is a platform. ઉપર પહોંચ્યા ત્યાં પ્રભુને ઉત્સંગમાં લઈને સક્રેન્દ્ર સિંહાસન ઉપર બેઠા. So he sits on a throne with the Tirthankar Paramatma in his god. તે વખતે અચ્યુત વગેરે 63 ઇન્દ્રો, so the 63 other Indras પણ સત્વર ત્યાં આવ્યા અને તેમણે વિધિપૂર્વક પ્રભુના જન્માભિષેક કર્યો. So they all Janma Abhishek is by pouring water, so giving him a bath. જન્માભિષેક કર્યો અને પછી સૌ ધર્મેન્દ્ર ઈશાનેન્દ્રને ઉત્સંગમાં પ્રભુને બેસાડીને વૃષભના શૃંગમાંથી નીકળતા જળ વડે સ્નાન કરાવ્યું. પછી ચંદનાકથી પ્રભુનું અર્ચન કરી અંજલિ જોડીને ઇન્દ્ર પ્રવૃત્તિ સ્તુતિ કરવાનો આરંભ કર્યો. પછી from then onwards the whole festivities last, and the Indra then recites in celebration, he says the kind of worshipful praise to Tirthankar Paramatma, and this is what he says. So this is how Hemchandracharya describes it here. Priyangu vrukshni jeva nilvarnawada જગતના પ્રિય હેતુભૂત અને દુસ્તર સંસાર રૂપ સાગરમાં સેતુ રૂપ એવા તમને હું નમસ્કાર કરું છું. So somebody who is absolutely benevolent and helpful to all life in the universe. Jagatna Priya Hetput, meaning somebody who is loved by everybody, and a Dustar Sansar Rups Sagarma Setu Rup. So in crossing the ocean of Sansar, somebody who is like a bridge, Eva Tamne Hu Namaskar Karu Chu. So to that person I am paying my respects, I am saying Namaskar. Gnan Rupi Ratnana Kosh Bhandar Rup. So you are the ocean, you are the treasurer of all knowledge. Viksit Kamar Jevi Kanti Vada. So you have the beauty of a full-blown kamar, that is a lotus flower. And Bhavya Prani Rup Kamarma Surya Jeva. So amongst all life or all the great souls, you are like the sun. Surya Jeva, Hey Bhagwan, tu apne namaskar karu chu. So I pay my respects to you. ફળદાયક એવા 1008 નર લક્ષણને ધારણ કરનારા. So you have 1008 auspicious signs on your body. ફળદાયક, so those which are very auspicious, but also give a lot of help, treasures. અને કર્મરૂપ અંધકારનો નાશ કરવામાં ચંદ્ર જેવા. So you are like the bright moon which dispels the darkness of karma. તમને મારા નમસ્કાર છે. ત્રણ જગતમાં પવિત્ર જ્ઞાનાદિ રત્નત્રય ધારણ કરનારા. So you are the beholder of the three jewels. સમ્યક જ્ઞાન, સમ્યક દર્શન, સમ્યક ચારિત્ર, રત્નત્રય. કર્મરૂપ સ્થળને ખોદવામાં. So you are the one who digs the hole to bury. So wherever there is karma, you have the ability to dig it out. Khanitra. Khanitra is an instrument. It says here in the appendix that Khanitra is an instrument that is used to dig. Khanitra saman અને શ્રેષ્ઠ ચારિત્રના ધારક એવા તમને મારા નમસ્કાર છે. So he uses various different metaphors to pay his respect to Bhagwan Parshvanath. સર્વ અતિશયોના પાત્ર અતિ દયાવાન. So you are very kind. અને સર્વ સંપત્તિના કારણભૂત. For all, you are the reason for all wealth everywhere. એવા હે પરમાત્મન તમને મારા નમસ્કાર છે. So I pay my respects to you again. કશાયને દૂર કરનાર કરુણાના ક્ષીર સાગર જેવા. So you have got rid of all the bad faults that one could have, like anger, greed, deceit, and pride. કશાયને દૂર કરનાર રાગ and દ્વેષ. કરુણાના ક્ષીર સાગર જેવા. So you are like an ocean of milk that has got rid of all the kashais, or all the bad all the bad faults. અને રાગ દ્વેષથી વિમુક્ત એવા હે મોક્ષગામી પ્રભુ. So you are free from rag and dvesh, and you are journeying towards moksha. તમને મારા નમસ્કાર છે. I bow down to you. હે પ્રભુ, જો તમારા ચરણની સેવાનું ફળ હોય તો તે ફળ વડે તમારી ઉપર ભવો ભવમાં મને ભક્તિભાવ પ્રાપ્ત થજો. So if I have any virtue that I've gathered as a result of my devotion to you, then in return for that virtue, in return for that devotion, can I have the benefit of being your servant in every life? ભવો ભવના મને ભક્તિ ભાવ પ્રાપ્ત થજો. So will I please grant me that devotion in all my lives. આવી રીતે પ્રભુની સ્તુતિ કરીને તેમને લઈ વામાદેવીના પડખામાં મૂક્યા. So from then, when they finished this particular ceremony, and Indra has paid his respects in this way, they take the baby Tirthankar Paramatma back to Vamadevi. અને તેમને આપેલી અસ્વાપીની નિદ્રા એની પાસે મૂકેલું પ્રતિબિંબ હરી લઈ ઇન્દ્ર પોતાના સ્થાનકે ગયા. So he takes away the image or the statue that he had put there. He takes away the sleep that he had induced on Vamadevi, the mother of the Tirthankar Paramatma, and then he goes back to his place, having fulfilled his duty as Indra in the celebration of Bhagwan Parshvanath's birth. And this is a standard procedure for during all the Tirthankar Paramatma's birth, and that, as I said, is well described in the Snatra Pujas. So that was that, and when we resume our classes in about 4 weeks' time, we will go further than this and what happens immediately after birth from the following day. And how the kingdom celebrates the birth. We will cover that in brief, and then we will proceed with the other events in the life of Bhagwan Parshvanath. Now I will halt here, and if there are any questions about this, let's address them first. Then I will ask Darshana to share her question with us, so we can then try and answer that. You can all switch on your videos if you like. Anything anybody wants to add about the birth and the conception? Bharatbhai, feel free if there is anything that significant that I've missed. I kept it short, but if anybody wants to share any other details, please feel free. No questions on today's topic? Okay. Dashna, do you want to tell us your question?
Yeah, so I think it was about our soul and how through classes everyone said our soul's been here since time immemorial. But Mike, I think I'm confused as to how. Like I've always got this thought of it has to started somewhere. It can't just appear from anywhere. Does that make sense?
Okay. And then I'm glad you actually voiced that, because I think in a class like this, people are worried about talking about their doubts, but we don't learn if we don't. And then the whole process of learning is to actually express that, and we move on from there. So in terms of answering your question, and when you were and Mira were discussing, you mentioned that in your understanding of science and the Big Bang theory,
Yes.
and you mentioned that it says that this is how the universe started. So I think the operative word there is a theory. It's Big Bang theory is a theoretical an explanation of a possible origin or a process based on certain observations. Now, those observations could have 100 other explanations, but somebody is putting it all together, and the same thing applies to the theory of evolution. And logically, the concept of that something appeared from nothing, so that is one way. So if you look at what scientists are trying to explain, is that things came about of their own accord, and that over a long period of time, when the universe came into being, after a long period of time, as a result of the chemical changes and all kinds of atmospheric changes, slowly there was this thing called a primordial soup, where all the different chemicals came together, and somehow life started as an amoeba in that primordial soup, and then gradually life evolved to bring us to this level, meaning that that concept takes believes that because of the differences in different life forms that can be explained by a process of uh, evolution, and uh, therefore it must be true that life must have started in a certain way and then would have progressed to this level, and then the corollary of it would be that we would progress further. So if you read the stories of Arthur C. Clarke at 2001 Space Odyssey and things like that, a lot of those things are sort of mentioned, and then they are understood or they are depicted as if that is the truth. But if you look at it logically, and if you look at it in a different way, so if you look at the Christian belief of the origin, and again, something that you hear and listen to in, say, some Hindu texts as to how the origin of the universe happened. So the concept of Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh, the generator. Vishnu is the operator, Mahesh is the destroyer. So God, generator, operator, and destroyer. So the concept of God in some ways is shared, but if you go deeper into what the Hindu texts, the concept of Brahma, the concept of Vishnu, and the concept of Mahesh is actually again a metaphor. And in the translation, in many ways, these things are lost. So the belief comes along that Brahma created the universe, Vishnu operates it, and Mahesh, Shiva, destroys it. But also the worship of Shiva is because he is the one with the ultimate abode of moksha. So from all those different kinds, there is that confusion in that belief. There is that concept of creation as depicted by Christianity, that God created earth in his own image. And then because there was paradise there, then he created a man in his own image, and from the body of from a rib of Adam, he created Eve because Adam was lonely. That is how I have heard it. I mean, I have not read the Bible as such and the sort of Genesis. I think this is book described in the book of Genesis, and that Adam and Eve were the occupants of this paradise, where the simple rule was that there is a forbidden fruit that they must never eat, and then that was broken because there is a very beautiful fruit, and that forbidden fruit was eaten, and that is how this concept of uh, sin and punishment and that whole sort of universe got created from that point of view. So there is all that concept as well, which science obviously says it wouldn't believe, because why would God create earth? And that is where is God then, if there is a God? So when you think about creation or spontaneous occurrence out of inanimate material, meaning the primordial soup, that something, the universe came about out of a big bang, out of matter, and then for somehow sentient beings were created out of that dead uh, material. So sentience is considered to be a function of chemical reactions. So we are basically nothing but chemical reactions and organized in a very complex way, but nothing beyond that. And if you begin to accept that, then there are lots of different questions. So the questions, if you're looking at creation, then creation talks about God created earth, God created universe. So if he created us in his own image, then why are we imperfect?
Yeah, yeah.
So if he created us, and then where does the concept of good and evil come? If life started somewhere, then who produced these rules about punishment and reward? So if you believe that punishment and reward occurs only in this life and there is no other life, so if we out of this dead material got created into beings which then get reincarnated, how is that possible? So what is that element that goes from this life to another life that came out of nothing? Okay. So in terms of the questions that this kinds of either creation by a god or creation by a spontaneous kind of process brings us to the many unanswerable questions. So then if an origin is not logical, so if you start believing that something must have started at some time, because we find it difficult to conceptualize or visualize the idea that there is eternity.
Yeah.
And the idea of eternity is something that is at the root of where your question comes from. That how
Correct.
can anything exist forever? There must have been a beginning.
Yes. Yeah.
But in believing in a beginning, you come across several different logical hurdles that cannot be explained away.
Yeah, I get that, because there are already questions going through my mind about if there is a beginning, then like my soul would have been pure. So then how did all my karmas build up?
So then, I mean, that again is not necessarily the answer to that question.
Yeah.
The soul was not always pure. The soul was always contaminated.
Okay.
So the soul's connection with karma is the beginning, is the start. That is how it is. The soul's journey is to slowly get rid of that and expose its true nature, ultimately leading it to moksha.
Correct.
That is the reason. But the soul is sentient, it is life. Everything else is non-life. So there are only two elements in the universe, life and non-life.
Okay. Yeah.
And the most logical explanation is that they have both always existed. And they do not need or needed a creator. But both those elements are subject to change. And change occurs according to natural laws in a process, according to the time cycles, according to different things. So, and then they can occur in massive forms. So even if you look at the history and the changes that have occurred that we can archaeologically or through the study of the physical sciences see what are the major changes that occurred. The oceans drying up, oceans spreading everywhere, all kinds of earthquakes happening, the global warming that's happening, and all the major changes that would occur. Those processes have gone on forever. So they are processes of destruction, they are processes of regeneration, and those cycles go on and on. So what we are facing now and what we will face in the next 20, 30, 50, couple of 100 years, what our children will face, will be all those changes due to the climate. And that is the nature of the times that we are living in. But that doesn't mean that everything will end there. And then when a new beginning starts, we'll go back to the another kind of Big Bang, what will happen? So if you look at astrophysics and things like that, so out of black holes from, I don't know if there is an expert here in physics, but all kinds of things are speculated. So some of those physical phenomenon And the explanation for that are probably true, but that does not explain life.
No.
So your question, is infinity possible? The answer is always yes, because if there is no beginning, there is no end. So there was no, the universe has had no beginning, therefore there will be no end. And in this context, there is a question that arises that is asked often in Jain texts, and then people are sort of questioning this, that if the purpose of life is for souls to make the effort to go to moksha, then if gradually all souls make that effort and slowly the universe um, begins, the souls in the universe begin to go to moksha, then won't there be a time in the future when this universe will be devoid of souls and moksha will be full of souls in moksha? Then what happens to the world? So the way that question is answered, that if you look at infinity, so there is infinite life. And I know there are a few mathematicians, and I think, Ketan, you studied mathematics at university. I don't know if they teach infinity, but Jain texts describe that if you add infinity to infinity, the answer is still infinity. If you subtract infinity from infinity, the answer is still infinity. If you multiply, if you divide, whatever you do with infinity, the result is infinity. So that is the concept of infinity. And the symbol of infinity, as you know, is like that. And Jain Dharma says that the number of souls in the universe is infinite, and souls have been going to moksha forever in the past. And when anybody asks the question of a Tirthankar Paramatma, that how many souls have gone to moksha at any one time, the answer is Anantami Nigodno Anantamo Bhag. So out of one Nigod, Anantami Nigodno Anantamo Bhag. So an infinite part of a Nigod, of the infinite Nigod, an infinite part of the infinite Nigod, that many souls, all those souls in that level, in that sort of bulk of Nigod have gone to moksha so far. And that answer remains true at any time when that question is asked of a Tirthankar Paramatma, and it will remain true forever. So the answer will always be Anantmi Nigodano Anantmo Bhag. Meaning the universe will never be empty of souls, and this cycle will carry on. But our purpose, the whole purpose of Dharma, is to, for those of us who have come as a result of that long journey to that certain point in life, in our journey, that we begin to grasp the essentials, and the beginning of our journey starts. And that particular point in our life, he said, that is called Tatha Bhavyatvano Paripak. So when our virtue, or our innate virtue of having the ability to go to moksha is expressed and is become ripe, our journey towards moksha starts at that time. So that is also described as Kal Labdhi no Paripak, or Tatha Bhavyatva no Paripak. Kal Labdhi, atle, this happens only when the time is right. So when the time is right, the soul, in whatever life it is, begins to develop an interest in something beyond the physical. begins to recognize itself as a spiritual being, begins to an extent to become, to a large extent, become moral, becomes aware of consequences of immoral acts. So the understanding of morality and all those things are all steps towards the progress towards moksha. And all these are described, so before and in the progress of the soul is described in 8 different stages. It's called Yog Drashti Na Artsan Yog Drashti Samuchma. There are 8 different parts, and this is also described by Patanjali Yoga as well. And there is a similar explanation in the Jain sciences. And the different levels are considered. So, and this is with respect to spiritual awareness. And the names of this drashti are, say, let me read it out to you. I've got the book here. So, for example, the 8 drashtis are Mitra, Tara, Bala, Vipra, Sthira, Kanta, Prabha, and Para. And this are all 8 drashtis are from the beginning of a faint light in your consciousness, your awareness, and the different virtues that accompany this different stages are the subject matter of this particular text called Yog Drashtina Ajwada. So I don't think there is any English translation of this, but if anybody wants to read this, I've had this for years, but I've started with the first volume and started with some parts of it, but this was conveyed to an audience during a 4-month period, I think, or maybe longer, maybe over 2 chomasas by Param Pujya Acharya Mukti Darshan Suraswaji Maharaj, and it's a tome. It's a great book, explores the subject of the development of the soul. But Darshana, the answer to your question is infinity is true. There doesn't have to be a beginning. There doesn't have to be an end. The universe has always been. The universe is always be. Trying to understand concepts of creation brings its own questions which are unanswerable. Trying to bring in a concept of generation spontaneously as and Big Bang theory and evolution again brings in itself a lot of other questions. So logically, unless we ourselves achieve Keval Gnan, we cannot test the validity. So we've got to accept the fact that somebody with Keval Gnan has expounded this knowledge and brought it down to us. So ultimately, it comes down to faith as well. As Mira shared with us that her faith came at that moment, at somebody's death, when the fact that divinity exists because there is something miraculous happening in what she was saying.
Thank you, Ajitbhai.
Hopefully that was helpful to
It was.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you for sharing that, and I'm thankful that I logged in a bit early so that I heard your conversation. So both you and Mira were talking. So thank you. I'll end this today. Sandeep Bhai is probably trying to find another speaker for about 4 weeks. We will probably be away, but if we come back early, then we might restart this depending on who Sandeep Bhai has got for the next 4 weeks. But we'll be away until the 17th. That is the plan for now, 17th of June. That's it. Have a good time over the next month, and I'll miss you all. I'll think of you on Tuesdays.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. चिराग्ना विरुद्ध कहीं पण बोल्यो हो ते सबै मनुष्यनि काय करे तस्मिच्छामि दुक्कडम. If I have said anything against the teachings of our Tirthankar Paramatma and Guru Bhagwan, I ask for forgiveness. Sarvamangala-mangalyam sarvakalyana-karanam pradhanam sarvadharmanam janam jeti sasanam. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pranam Ajitbhai, thank you.
Ram Bharat Bhai, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jai Jitendra.